State Board of Education District 3 Board Member Renee Cantun. My question is, in 2023, an Annie E. Cassie Foundation Education ranked Nevada 46 out of 50. What is one thing that you can do to improve the state's education rank?
Okay. Well, Alice, thank you for the question.
Yes.
And so, yes, the Annie E. Casey Foundation came out with their report, and we ranked, I believe, 46th or 47th.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasons that we were so low had to do not just with educational achievement, it also had to do with economic opportunity and access to health care. So I believe that, the solution or the solutions are kind of on various different fronts to help raise our achievement level. Obviously, we need to do, I think in the state board, working to pass policy and regulation that will help young people to achieve at higher levels. And I think some of the things that we focus on are a lot of the supports that young people need in order to raise their achievement level. So before you can show up to school and learn, do you have adequate nutrition? One, right? Are you having mental or emotional needs or concerns? That's another thing. Do you need access to health care? Do you have the basic supports that you need to go to school and learn? And I think a lot of the conversations we have is how we can advocate as a board to provide young people with those supports to help them elevate their student achievement. I think that's very important. But I think we need to work on other fronts. We need to improve our access to health care for young people, and that includes, like I said, mental health support. I was having a conversation with an educator earlier this week, and we were talking about why young people's achievement, dipped after COVID and hasn't come up, and their response had a lot to do with kind of having that kind of support to help them achieve. And then, the third part is economic opportunity. Moms, dads need jobs. Young people, need economic stability and support to succeed. So, I think we as a board do what we can within kind of our area with policy, with regulation, to make schools better for our kids. So.
My question for you is, what barriers do marginalized communities face in accessing quality education?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. It was Jesse, right? Your
Yeah.
name, Jesse. So, thank you all for the questions, and both of y'all are from Equipo Academy, so that's really cool that y'all are here. So, for students who come from, historically underserved communities, who come from poverty, who, face a variety of different challenges, there are so many different barriers that young people face. So I'm not sure if you all are aware or not, but I work for a program called JAG, Jobs for America's Graduates. And the young people that we help have on average 8 different barriers to success. So those barriers include things like, socioeconomic, right? Free and reduced lunch, right? It's an economic issue. We have young people who have, credit deficiency. They may have low GPAs. The absentee rate has not bounced back after COVID. It's still very, very high. It's unacceptably high. And, all of those are different barriers that young people face. But if you're a young person, and you're first generation kid, you don't have that tradition of college going in the house. You may not even have had, a mom or dad who had graduated high school. I know my own parents didn't graduate high school. And so, when your own parents, have not had that experience, it becomes much more challenging. All parents have really good hopes for their kids, but it's really hard to tell you about something that they haven't experienced. So I think those are some of the things, within the school itself. I have to say I do the work that I do because I believe that our schools sadly do not value kids equally. I do not. I think when a young person walks in the building, a set of value judgments and evaluations are made about them um, based on who they are, their appearance, their socioeconomics, their grades, their siblings. And, based on these judgments, they say, well, we're going to provide you, we're going to put you in this set of courses versus that set of courses, or we're going to provide you these opportunities or deny you these other opportunities. And a lot of it is related to, you know, um, you know, if parents are wealthy, they tend to have many more opportunities. If parents, have more limited economic resources, the young people have fewer opportunities. Then you have the issue of language barrier, right? If you or your parents don't have the language barrier and are uncomfortable coming to campus advocating for you, then that's another barrier. Does that answer your question, Jessica?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Um, my question for you is, well, I think just a little bit of, never mind. One of
That's
the most
okay.
challenging parts for me from going to middle school to high school
Mhm.
is definitely the earlier start times.
Ooh,
Like high school
yes.
starts a lot earlier than my middle school did, and I feel that it is difficult for me to get up on time, and I feel like that my friends feel that way too. And I just wanted to know if you supported measures to make school start times later for the sake of high school students' mental and physical health, and why or why not?
So, Clive, great question. And the school district the state board of ed has been grappling with the question of school start times for over a year now. If it were up to me, you know, it would be very hard, for me and a lot of people to be ready to perform at 6:30 or 7 a.m., much less wake up at 4:30 or 5 to catch a bus, get a ride, get to the school, and then be ready to learn. All you have to do is walk into a high school class, first period, and you see how sleepy students are, right? You walk in, it's like, yeah, how much learning can take place if you're really not ready to be in the game yet, right? So I, the research show this. This is the deal. So the State Board of Ed looked at the research about school start times, and what the research says is that when high school age kids, when adolescents have to start school earlier in the daytime, their achievement goes down, their grades go down, their rates of depression go up, and so they have a harder time learning. It's really tough, and it's all having to do with the age and kind of the biological development of the young person at that point in time. I myself support earlier school start times, but what we as a board are doing is we're trying to get as much community input as we can so that we can make a decision that the community wants. So that's kind of where we're at, but I would very much, I believe it's also more of kind of a rearranging transportation times. It's not an unsolvable problem. Very often when we talk to administrators about it, they describe the whole, changing the school start time for high school as an impossibility. Like we're trying to, move the moon or something, but it's really not. I think a lot of the focus sometimes is on what's easier administratively than what's better for students.
My next question is technology is a main part of our education, and because of this, it has caused the education system to rely on technology rather than invest in high material and curriculum for students. What are some ways that students can get a high quality education without having to rely on technology?
Ways that students can get a higher quality education, and that is a great question. Um, I know that when I talk to young people, in high school, which is, where I work with high school youth. Um, very often young people feel that a lot of the curriculum and the lessons are irrelevant and boring to their own lives. I mean, that's what I hear a lot of young people say. It's like, what's the point of what we're doing? And I think there's a lot of point to what we're doing. Education is so absolutely essential, for success. But I think that the most important thing a young person can do is to become a lifelong learner, right? You know, you know, from my own experience growing up, and I'm from a different generation, than you all. I'm a little bit older, but we had encyclopedias back then, right? And so, one of the ways that I was really able to spark my own learning, my own kind of learning journey, was whenever I was curious about anything, I would look it up. Back then, it was in a book, right? An encyclopedia. In this day and age, technology is not necessarily bad, but, if you have, a curiosity about something, look it up. That's what I would recommend. Become curious, read books, read literature, listen to books if you don't want to read them, with your eyes. Engage with the world, get out there. I think that's the most important thing. With regard to having access to better curriculum, I think that that's something that we that we as adults need to make sure that we identify. Very often we're so focused on increasing test scores and star ratings and different things that we lose sight of the fact that, learning has to be interesting and engaging and fun and not just geared towards passing a test. So when a young person takes charge of their own learning, and becomes curious, I think, the sky is the limit.
What strategies can be implemented to promote equity in education?
Ooh, great question. So, I really like the whole, there's this, have y'all heard of MTSS, a multi-tiered system of supports that the state is moving towards? So this is kind of a technical term, but, basically, it's basically offering, like, tier 1 is high quality instruction for all young people, right? And then tier 2 is providing additional supports, and tier 3 is providing intensive supports. So let's take the case of someone who is, kind of, average to above average student. They might do fine just with tier 1 high quality instruction, right? But in terms of creating that equality or equity of opportunity that you're talking about, that's where getting to tier 2 and tier 3 is important. So let's say that you're a student with a disability, that you have, dyslexia or dyspraxia or whatever it is, that the school provide those additional supports that you need to get you on track. And I think part of what happens, because really it's funding issues, very often schools are supposed to identify, by, let's say, by the age of 6 or 7, that you have a disability. But, they don't always successfully identify young people who need, additional support. So I think part of it is having those additional supports available to young people consistently. And, honestly, I think the most important thing is that, just be, very honest. Our investment in education per pupil is about $10,500 or so. I think we're near the bottom in school funding. The average per pupil expenditure across the country is $15,000. So we're about, we're about $5,000 per student behind other states. And so what does that mean? You have bigger class sizes, you have fewer resources, and so student achievement goes down. And the ones who get left behind the most are the students who have more challenges or come from historically underserved backgrounds.
My question is, so in like some of my classes there is fun and exciting like things that we do, and we have discussions and other things,
Hmm.
and in other of my classes there's like the learning is based more on worksheets and writing stuff down, like following instructions and then writing it down and less discussion. And I just want to know, if you're reelected, how you can support consistent curriculum and instruction in all classrooms throughout the day instead of just some classrooms.
So supporting consistent curriculum and instruction instead of just having these sheets that you have. When the role of the state board, in addition to looking at, the student achievement side, also helps to oversee a lot of the licensure process, I think for teachers. And I think together looking at student achievement, looking at the materials that you have access to, um, and looking at the quality of the teachers that you have in the classroom are levers that the state board can use and work with to improve the quality of curriculum. If you have a better trained teacher, who's being licensed, if we have more teachers coming to Nevada, and then, finding the right curriculum, coupled with that, you can begin to raise the student achievement of young people.
My final question is, what are two concrete things that can be done to recognize and give teachers raises without having to cut school budgets and get rid of student programs?
How do we give teachers raises without cutting, programs, right? Because if you take from here, usually if you're going to give more here, you have to offer less here. That's usually the dynamic. I think we as a state, need to make some very important decisions about investing in the future of our young people. And I think that I know that we're moving in the right direction. I know that the governor and the legislature, made a $2.6 billion increase in investment in education, which I think is important, but it's not enough. I think that what we need to do is to raise our investment in education. There's no way around it. I don't see any other way of solving the issue, of rewarding teachers better, of having smaller class sizes, than by finding other ways to invest more in our kids. And I'll tell you what, our kids are our most valuable resource, our young people. And if we're being, cheap about investing in our own kids, I think we really have to question our own motivations as adults about what our priorities are. That's what I think.
How does parental involvement influence students' success, and what challenges do families face?
Yes. You know what? In my opinion, uh, the parent or the parents are a child's most important teacher. You probably know that, as who's your most important teacher? Isn't it your mom and your dad, and who teach you right and wrong, who teach you so many basics, just about being a human being in this on this planet, and being a loving person, doing everything you do. Um, you know, it's absolutely essential to have student involvement in education, and not just at home teaching you, but making it so that our schools are more friendly and welcoming, of parent involvement. And I know that they are. I know that they try, but I also know that most parents don't volunteer at school, don't have time. So I think that's kind of a constant struggle. How do we as educators, you know, um, provide information, engage parents at times when they're available, so that we can really maximize their involvement. So, I think we have to be creative about solving that. If all your workshops are right after school, parents are at work. If they're at 6 or 7 p.m., parents can't go to a workshop necessarily because they're fixing dinner, taking care of kids, doing other things after getting home from work. I think that we need to be very creative in terms of how we involve parents. Maybe it's a matter of providing information in certain workplaces. There are workplaces where a lot of parents are. Why can't we as educators, you know, uh, engage parents within their workplace when they're on a break and talk to them there. So those are some of my thoughts on that.
My last question is like, well, I don't know about other districts around the state, but CCSD has been moving towards like more single point of entry schools. So like there's like a middle school that's close to my house. There was not a fence there before. Now there is a fence, and like the high school I go to now has a fence to make it so you can only enter from one place during the school day. And I understand that like safety is an important thing, but I also think that like all of these schools are like in communities that people, and I think that people in the communities could use a school to get together with and like really make a community. And I feel that like putting up all of these fences everywhere kind of deters everyone from that. And my question was like, I understand that security is important, but like if you're really elected, how can you ensure that additional security measures don't make schools feel more inaccessible to community members and family and students?
Yeah. I don't think the answer is just more gates and more police officers. I know that, those are necessary in this day and age to have, when I was in high school, there was no law enforcement in schools. And I think it's a sad statement about where we are that we have police officers in schools. I think it's important, it's necessary, but it's also a sad comment on the state of our education. I know that when I walk into many high school campuses, they feel like a prison. There are gates everywhere, there are fences everywhere. You have to get buzzed in and out. So, I put myself in the place of a young person in navigating through that sort of setting, and I feel like I would be being treated like a prisoner. Honestly, that's what it feels like. And I think that I know that at the State Board of Ed, in the Department of Ed, they received a law enforcement grant recently. So part of it is, cameras and police officers, but the other part has to do with mental health supports and things like that. Other things that are more preventative and also identifying any risk factors beforehand is important. My hope and dream for schools is that they would be, community schools. Right now, most of our school buildings sit empty 18 hours or 16 hours out of the day, right? They're empty. They're not being used, when in reality, the fields could be used, to play. The courts and the playgrounds could be used for that purpose. The classrooms could be used for a variety of different community activities. And, my hope and dream would be to work to make our schools more accessible and usable for the community, rather than, the sad state they're in right now. I mean, that whole single point of entry, I get why they do it, but I think it's not good enough for our kids, and we need to do better.